Hi, gang. Scott Taylor here with Scott Taylor Private Coaching. This is hopefully, prayer hands, our final session. This is our third session with the new RPA. The CAR has come up with a new updated version, the 2021 December 1 update. It starts today is the 16th, and so we'll actually be using that contract for residential purchases here in about 15 days, 14 days. So exciting times for us. I want to get this recorded and out onto the tubes. So anybody who needs it and needs the help can go ahead and get it. I am Scott Taylor. I'm a certified forms trainer. I am not specifically forms trained by CAR for this particular transaction, this particular contract, but with our help that we have, our Kate Graham, our illustrious support broker, and myself and our experience in the business, we should be able to give you a good explanation. This is the third of three, again, fingers crossed, of these trainings. So if you missed, the most important part is the first 4 pages that are completely new, and they're a summary. Summary pages, you want to make sure you go back and watch the first one. The second one, I think we touch on a few things that everybody would pick up on. And then now session 3 is going to wrap up the contract. I will have the ability to switch back and forth, changing tabs. So if you have a specific question, or if we're referring to the previous version, the one we're using today, I have them on the screen and we can toggle back and forth. As always, anything that we talked about here is not intended to be considered tax or legal advice, and is definitely not intended to replace any advice that you would get from your own broker. Your license is hung with your broker for a reason. You need to go to them with any specific questions or help. What we talk about here is mainly for conversation like we would have in a hallway, broker to broker, chatting about a problem, coming up with some solutions, and then you take those solutions and ideas to your broker to get their final say-so. And that is it. Let's get going. I'm going to share my screen here. So what we have here, and before I get going, guys, if you just give me a nod, is the size, the scale okay on this? I've expanded it, so it should be okay on your screen. You should be able to see the whole page across. We left off at the end of paragraph 8 last session, and so we're starting with paragraph 9. So Tiff, give me a nod. Is this size okay?
Can you take it up one more? One more.
Sure can. Let's one more click. How's that?
Perf.
I'm going to make that a little wider so I can see everything. Okay, better. Let's go to, so we're going to toggle over to this other version. So here's our old, the old one, not new one, and we'll toggle back and forth if we need to. Okay, so I'm not going to really go back much. We'll at the end maybe go back and do a quick review, and I can have that as a separate video. But these are items included and excluded from the sale. You'll notice that because of the summary pages at the front, I should have another version of this actually, so I can go to the front. But you'll notice that it was paragraph 8 in our old contract, and the format is quite a bit different. It has the wording, but you used to be able to check the box here for adding the stove and the refrigerator, washer, dryer, and then add additional items on there. Now it's just the language of the contract. So it does include existing electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, fixtures, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm going to do here, give me a second. I'm going to drag this and go to the very beginning. So to go to paragraph 9 on our summary page, did I miss it?
It's P.
P. Okay, thank
Next
you.
page.
Here we go. Okay, so the paragraph 9 here, here is referenced here. This is where you're going to actually click the boxes. And again, I can't say enough about the hard work of the people at CAR and the forms and contracts group of agents and brokers that help put this together. Amazing job. This is fantastic what we've got here. You can basically mix and match, pick your favorites, and add those into the transaction. Now, be cautious, careful, whatever. If you're adding in personal property items like a tractor, sea trains, horse corral panels, things that would have a substantial value and could actually affect the purchase value of the property. If your buyer's getting a loan, there needs to be something in there somewhere, even if it's by an addendum, that the personal items transferring with the sale have zero value. So just a quick heads up, you'll need to chat with your lender to make sure that you word that correctly so that when it hits underwriting, they know that it has zero value. I've got, for example, right now we're buying, I'm representing a buyer who's purchasing a property that has 3 different mobile homes in various states of disrepair, a tractor of various implements, some horse panel barn stuff, some movable farm ranch related items. And so we just basically put on there that all those items were included. I picked up the phone while I was writing the offer, went to the loan broker that they're working with, the loan officer, and said, hey, is this going to work for you? He said, please make sure it has a zero value. So we did. I just put them in. So I'm using the old contract here, but I just put those items in there, the additional following items, and I added those in. Existing mobile homes, tractor, implements, and farm-related personal items are included in the sale at zero value. That's where you would put in something like that. On the new version, you're going to be up here in subsection P at the beginning, and then I would need to list items if I could or had to. Now, I don't know where, Kate, do you know where we would put something? I guess we'd have to put it as an addendum, because there really isn't any space here for us to say zero value.
You know, Scott, I have, because personal property can cause us so many problems, I have for many years created a little letter of intent or bill of sale kind of thing that is completely separate from the RPA. And it includes an inventory of those personal property items. There's an acknowledgement that it is not a part of the RPA, and that no value is given to these items.
Oh, not a bad idea. Well, if you want, go ahead and share that with me, and I can forward it out to everybody if you want to share something like that. Otherwise, it would be, I think there's a bill of sale in the zip forms. Am I wrong? Right?
There is, but it appends to the RPA, and I always wanted my personal property.
You want that.
Yeah.
You want that out of the transaction.
You do. And the signatories are buyer and seller, and they're acknowledging that the brokers are not a part of anything to do with personal property. Real estate.
I would stay out of personal property brokering. I mean, you're basically just getting in the middle of a Craigslist transaction at that point, and there's really no money in it, and there's lots of liability in it.
Yep. I have found that to be the cleanest way to deal with personal property, because it causes problems with your lender because of the finite space you have to work in on the RPA. You don't create a complete inventory list, and misunderstandings happen, and you get to deal with angry, upset people. So I am going to forward you my recommended approach. Yes.
Cool. I would love that. In the event that you are working with a broker that, or you're in a situation like I am, where we're actually buying mobile homes as part of the purchase, but at zero value, you can go ahead and fill that in there. One thing that I would say I saw more often than I would have liked to is this whole potted plants and shrubs. The fountain, we have a fountain in here. People would battle over the fountain as well. So this gives you an opportunity to make sure that all those items that the buyers want would be represented to transfer with the sale. Just be ready for that lender to come back to you and say, hey, I need an addendum for zero value. That's what that's for, because the bank, just like we don't want to be personal property broker, the bank can't really use personal property as collateral for their high dollar, $1 million, $700,000 loan. It does them nothing. Personal property has to have zero value so they can check their boxes and loan these people the money. One thing that I wanted to make sure, is this the new one or the old one? This is the new one. is the whole brackets. Here we go. Okay. So I'm not going to go line by line through this. This is not my intention for that. But one thing I really want to focus on is this brackets and method of attachment. So one of my side projects that I did with one of the agents that when I was a broker was I was an instructor for new real estate licensee classes, the courses that you got to take. And you'll remember when you got your license that it all dealt with method of attachment. If it was screwed or nailed in, it was considered part of the property. And if it was just sitting there, it was not. It would be considered personal property. So, and we have had that come up, right? There's a specific cubby for the microwave, and this one model of microwave fits exactly in that cubby, but it is not bolted or screwed down. If it's not listed as part of the contract, there is potential for that seller to take it with them and be within their rights within the contract to take it with them. I learned to make sure that was discussed and dealt with after buying about 2 or 3 microwaves as a buyer's agent in my early days. So with regards to televisions and speaker systems, we know that a lot of these homes, especially that we sell above $1 million, are going to have some sort of speaker system, and there will be other components that run that, amplifiers and equalizers and whatever, signal shooters, so that that whole system can run. Look to the listing agent to give you an inventory list, but you want to make sure that it is very clear what's going to transfer and what's not within the contract. And that's why anything that is bolded like this, whoops, you're going to want to pay attention. So unless otherwise specified, paragraph 3P, brackets attached to walls, floors, and ceilings for any component, furniture or furniture item, will be removed, and holes and other damage shall be repaired, not painted. So it defaults unless it's otherwise specified in 3P. Where are we? 3P. Was that up here, guys?
Top of page 3, I think.
Oh, let's see. Top page 3P. Yeah, Jim, that's in it. So unless the bracket is to stay, you would check that box and say, you have that option. There it is right there. Wall mounted brackets for video and audio equipment would stay.
So
do you have any thoughts on why they would not want, if you're going to remove the bracket and fill the hole, correct the hole, why would they want you to not paint it?
Paint matching is the whole issue with that. That's why termite work, they won't paint either, because of matching paint.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that all comes down to, it's the aesthetics. Married to a designer. We deal with that. Actually, designers make a good amount of money because people try to do touch-up paint, and there's these lots, one brush swipe over the top of all the filled holes in the walls. And the designer is the first one that gets called to come in and make sure that gets painted with a new color and done right. But that's where that comes from. The previous contract, if you look, brackets attached to walls, floors, ceilings, or other component, and then they gave you the option. I can't check this box here, but will be removed or will be removed. So the previous version, if you are old school like me, the new one is a reverse of what we used to see. So it used to be they would stay. Now they go. So another thing that we would deal with are these, and again, I'm married to one, but I don't know what they are. The panels for curtain panels and these extra curtain rods. So the blinds inside of the window are screwed in, bolted in, and that would be considered part of the property. The brackets in the past were considered part of the property because they are screwed to the property, but the rod and the panels are removable and therefore personal property unless clarified. What they've done now is say TV, furniture related brackets, those all go. unless you want them. And then you need to say so in, whoops, where am I? Unless you say so in this section.
Okay, may I correct you? Sorry.
Oh, am I off?
Yes, in paragraph 3B of the new RPA,
Good.
the second line says,
Oh, I should have stayed where I was.
window coverings, which includes blinds, curtains, draperies, shutters, or any other material that cover any portion of the window. So I think that
Okay, that is an
have,
update.
yeah, they have cleaned that up.
Okay, good to know. Where am I here? I'm looking for 3.
3B, you're looking for P, 3P, but in paragraph 9.
Yeah.
B,
Oh, we're in paragraph 9. Okay, that's where I'm at.
yeah, 9B2.
I'm sure you guys are getting seasick here with me scrolling around. Sorry about that.
They get very specific about all the little particulars.
The ring door, what's that called? Doorbell, but it's not a doorbell, it's a video camera and all that. Those security systems used to monitor and secure the property, not limited to motion detectors, window alarms, or other equipment utilized if checked in paragraph 3 into items are included with the sale. Home automation, including smart features, like all that kind of stuff. All these question marks are already being addressed. Those are considered included. So if you've got a listing, you're meeting with the seller, those things are staying unless we have them specifically excluded. It's a really, really, really important for you to know. We had the bumblebee curtain, shower curtain, and matching towels and hand towels issue that actually went to small claims court. There was a collectible series by a specific designer online. The seller loved this bumblebee theme. And so she packed them up and took them away. And the buyer was apoplectic about it. The buyer went berserk and actually took the seller to small claims court. So this is actually going to keep us out of a good amount of trouble, but you need to know what you're doing and make sure that you check the boxes correctly. So.
And spend a minute on paragraph 9B2. They have
9B2.
itemized with great specificity all of those little things that come into question.
Okay, let's dig into it. Mechanical, electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, and heating fixtures, ceiling fans, fireplace insert. I've got a seller with a fireplace insert she loves. I said, find one that you don't like before we get it on the market, because literally the gas logs were a big deal to her. And grates, solar power system, already built in. I love to see that. Built-in appliances and appliances for which special openings or encasements have been made, whether or not checked. So my microwave with the specific model and all that stays put now with the new contract update. Window and door screens, awnings, shutters, window coverings. Thank you, Kate, for this one. There's a little heads up on that. Window coverings, including blinds, curtains, drapery, shutters, and other materials that cover the portion of any portion of the window. Attached floor coverings, television antennas, satellite dishes, and the guy who has removed a couple of satellite dishes for clients, although I should never do that, and I'm not doing it anymore. They stay. Air coolers, conditioners, pool spa equipment, not limited to any cleaning equipment such as motorized automatic pool cleaners, pool nets, and covers. Wow, this is detailed. Garage door openers, remote controls, mailbox, in-ground landscaping, water features, fountains. Thank you for the fountain. That was a big issue in the past. Water softeners, purifiers, light bulbs, including smart bulbs. Imagine a world where we have to get so detailed that the light bulbs are included. And all items specified as included in paragraph 3P, which, as you remember, are these check boxes here.
And I think the key phrase is if currently existing at the time of acceptance.
Yes.
I
So,
just
if
closed
seller
one.
does not intend to include items specified because it is not owned by seller, item should be listed as excluded in paragraph 3P. Let's go back to it. We have excluded items here. And obviously, if you don't have enough, you have more items excluded than is on here, you can always add an addendum and make a list of excluded items, attach a list of excluded items as an appendix, however you need to do it. I love that. I love that. That saves a lot of trouble. Thanks for the clarification, Kate. If I'm good with my editor, I'll say, Tom, go back and edit that out. This will be a check to see if he actually does it. Non-dedicated devices, smart home and security system devices, including in the sale, except for any non-dedicated personal computer, tablet, phone, or other features. So if they can download an app on their own device, you don't have to leave your iPad behind to run the Ring doorbell, for example, which is nice to know. Leased and lien systems, solar is a biggie, but water softeners, water filtration, if you see one of those big multi-filtration units with the reverse osmosis or charcoal filters, or however UV, however they want to filter their water, start asking questions of the listing agent, whether or not it's the intention for that to stay, if it needs to be excluded, is it liened or leased? Solar panels, I always ask. Again, we got into solar panels last week, but there are people here who were not a part of that. Keep in mind that sometimes if the property, if those solar panels started out as a lease, but the seller paid off the lease or bought out the lease, it is most likely that what happened, they didn't actually buy those from the leasing company. They actually prepaid the lease, either part of the way out or all the way out. And there is an ongoing servicing agreement with that leasing company, because just because there's no payments due from a lease doesn't mean that the lease is not in place. So as a buyer's agent, you need to make sure you really get a copy of that and start early to facilitate the transfer to the new buyer. That could slow down your purchase, because the bank is going to want to see that the new buyer has the transfer on that. They want to see the paperwork. So FYI, don't let it kill your deal.
But I have a quick question on solar.
Sure.
Something came up recently. I can't remember if it was, I thought it was a lease, that we were told we were trying to transfer it, but it wasn't showing up on the prelim.
Okay.
And the reason that it wasn't showing up on the prelim was that it was more than 5 years ago that they initiated it.
Okay.
Why are those things not showing up on the prelim if they're older than 5 years?
Was it a lease or a purchase, Kim? Do you remember?
I thought it was a lease, but it could have been a purchase. But it wasn't that they bought it 5 years ago. It was an ongoing thing. Whether they bought it and were making payments or whether it was leased. Escrow said, yeah, they don't show up if they're more than 5 years ago.
Must have been something. What were those loans that they were doing there for a while, Kate? Remember those?
The hero loans.
Hero loans, yeah.
They were calling them super liens because
Yeah.
they went in before the mortgage lien.
Right. As part of the first. So it's basically HOA style super lien that goes in front.
Yeah.
I've seen those where they show up, they tie it to the actual name of the purchaser and file UCC filing on it, where it ties to them as an individual, to their social security number. So escrow could probably pull a UCC on them and UCC search and see if they pop up with their seller social. Possible.
Fact of the matter is, it took, I'm going to say, probably 3, 4, 5 years to kind of standardize how the type and character of the whatever the document is we want to, either the lease or the purchase. I sat in on many meetings while we tried to figure out how to develop a consistent system.
Absolutely.
And I'm not even sure it's still consistent, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess we'd have to have a little separate sidebar with a title officer and see how they're doing that. The number of solar companies that are out and the guy's knocking doors and doing advertising online. There's a ton of them out there right now. So,
And they have no regulation to speak
right.
of. Yeah.
It's kind of a free for all out there. So
Kate, are you aware, or are either of you aware of anything that they're doing to streamline the process of a lease transfer? It's just taking forever.
Oh, it is, especially Tesla.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no real opportunity for, I have not come across anything. So what ends up happening, and I actually know a kid that did some door knocking selling solar. So I got a little bit of the background. So what they do is they establish a lease with the sales company, and then the sales company will bundle those leases on a monthly basis and sell them off to a lease servicing company. And then the lease servicing company will bundle thousands of these together and sell all of them off to a master servicing company. So many times, if they have the original paperwork, but they haven't saved any of the mail that shows up from these different companies as they get transferred, you kind of on a wild goose chase, or you or escrow or somebody is out there trying to find who the servicing company is. And then you got to get the seller to sign authorization so you can do the research to find out what the policy number is and what the method to transfer the lease is, and then get the authorization forms to begin the transfer process. It is, I wouldn't say a nightmare, but it is
Wild West.
Yeah.
It is very challenging. And
Oh,
I don't know that anybody has any, like, there's not a large enough group at any given time transferring a lease on solar to cause any change to happen in that industry. So until they get regulated like other industries are, to the level where, you know, we can figure out who's servicing what and what notifications need to be sent, and making it easier to track these down, right? Because these are sold off like mortgages, like any other financial product. But they're treated the same as like the bug guys that come door to door. It's the same. As far as the government regulation goes, it's the same. If you hire it out for this bug company to come and spray your yard, and then they sell that contract to somebody else, you're paying the bill, but it doesn't matter. And it's the same as solar. And I think it's more
companies
important.
were doing that.
Yeah, they will do that. Larger metro areas around here, we have small kind of mom and pop companies doing most of that spray and go work, termites and bugs and spiders and whatnot. But in larger metro areas, which I know of Seattle specifically, because I had a former client of mine that was actually looking at buying. He got a buyout from selling his business, and he was going to buy one of these servicing companies and just collect the money. It's just like a little money machine.
Wow.
For servicing these out.
May I make one more point here?
Yeah. And then we'll move on.
The last couple that I've dealt with, the seller had to initiate the communication with the servicer. Escrow can't do it. Agents can't do it. They will only talk to the seller.
Yep. You need it's similar to the authorization to release info that we had to deal with the short sales back in the day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's considered private, because you're talking about financial and contracts. Oh, okay. Unless there's something else, we can have a separate sidebar on solar, and we can talk all day about that. But we're going to keep moving on. Allocation of costs. You'll remember what it used to look like. Who's going to pay for what? Where the heck is it? Our allocation of costs. It was right here, paragraph 7, right? Who pays for what? This is that used to be one of our little favorites, where we would kind of sneak some things in here once in a while if the agent wasn't paying attention, right? It gave you an opportunity right here in paragraph 7 to fill in and say, oh, we want you to pay for this little report. Or a report would get added in, and we'd have to take it out by addendum. This is all kind of handled now in this section under, where are we? Q through, it's all Q, looks like. One whole page of them to be broken out. Now, we went over these in detail on our first session. Maybe it was the second session. So I'm not going to dig into that super detail, but it does remove, hold on a second. Does it remove the government, minimum mandatory government retrofit standards? That was such a biggie back in the day. Back in the day. Oh man. This one. Remember this one, Kate? Does this
Yeah.
come up with you?
Yeah, all the time.
So there are brokerages in our area, and I'm sure there are others throughout the state of California that recommend leaving those blank, and that if it does come up to negotiate it later, that was their stand. So if you came up across with an agent bringing a buyer or had a listing from one of those brokerages, these two boxes under 7B2 would be left blank. And I actually sat with the broker of this particular brokerage and had them explain to me why they had done that. Their feeling is that some of the wording of this paragraph made it such that the seller might be signing a blank check, and they didn't want to. Now, it's possible that popped up in a lawsuit and they got stung by it somehow, but I think that's been remedied by the way that this form is set out now. Government required point of sale inspections and reports, and then corrective and remedial action. I don't see government mandated retrofit in the language.
I have not identified that either.
So we have government requirements and corrective or remedial action, but it doesn't specifically reference that I've been able to find. Again, this is like put yourself to sleep kind of language, but any retrofit specific. Now, we do live in an area where there were some homes that were built in a time where the toilets flushed with 2 gallons, and the sink aerators would just let water flow freely, and they might need to be updated in some way. I think that's the intention for the government mandated retrofit paragraph, but that's been removed. Now that's just a point of sale requirement. We do have a point of sale requirement in at least one of the cities, maybe more, to scope the sewer lateral. But that is not something that's addressed specifically, other than to say that it's a government mandated or government required point of sale action, which would apply. Listing agent beware, because it's a little more vague. Q6, Q5 and Q6 as a listing agent, if it says for seller to pay and you don't know what those might be ready for some pushback. They're coming for your wallet.
Are you aware of any other government retrofits other than the sewer laterals in SLO and the different plumbing retrofits in various cities and county?
Those are the ones that I know of. There were in cities in Santa Maria and Guadalupe, some areas of Santa Barbara County, they did an earthquake retrofit back in 2012 and 13. And there was some money for people if they filled out forms and initiated, and that was considered a required retrofit. They had to pay some of the portion themselves. So there are some areas, I'm sure, of earthquake retrofit. There might even be some fire retrofit stuff up in the mountains. They might have you require to coat the underside of your eaves with something stucco or something fire retardant. But that's in our area. The main ones we deal with are the water related, because they're just so hit with the drought.
Well, interesting that they have not wrapped the fire hardening defensible space disclosure in here.
Yeah, I would expect to see that on another update. It is becoming such an issue.
Everywhere, even in town.
Yeah. In the cities, it's everywhere. We're all concerned about the fire.
Well,
so
can I bring one other of our frequently used forms to everybody's awareness? The SWPI.
Sure. Yep. Septic well, property monument.
They did give you an option of including in paragraph 4B of the new RPA. But it's interesting to me because what they were, since the obvious intent was to put all the deal points on those first 3 pages, that they dropped that back.
Left that out. Okay, so let's find 4. Sorry, I was scrolling.
Many new agents don't even know about an SWPI. Come down.
Wow.
4B.
4B. Here we go. Septic septic well, property monument, and propane addendum. So guys, if you're dealing with property outside the city limits, sometimes in city limits, honestly, but this is primarily for ranch type of properties. 2+ acres is where I usually bump into this one. But if it has septic and not sewer, if it has a well or has shared well, primarily well, or single property well, and then monuments is for the boundaries, and then propane addendum. This is you're going to want to loop in with either your broker support person, or your mentor to make sure you get that filled out correctly. It is some serious detail in that form, even such that I submitted one filled out correctly, and the listing agent came back and said it referenced in the counteroffer an item that I never checked the box for. So I had to explain that to my buyer, like, okay, this is a non-issue. But even a long time standing broker, his assistant was handling, who's also a very long standing agent. They missed something on that form. So it's not something you want to mess around with, but yeah, make sure that that's on there. I think it's less common in the more densely populated areas that they would leave it off and separate. We deal with it a lot, so you're going to want to make sure. In fact, it might be a good idea for us to have a separate session on that form. Have they made any changes to it? Do you know?
I have not seen, I think they're putting out a new one, but I haven't seen it.
I think I saw something come through that they were going to be doing that.
Okay.
Let's bring that up. Tiff, if you want to remind me later, let's see if it would be beneficial for our coaching people to get into that. That's a good point.
Yeah, we had one go through a couple of months ago with a new agent, and he had no idea what an SWPI was. So he did end up paying for a septic and a well reports, which was
it's the money. The septic report's going to run you $1,000 to $1,500, depending on how hard it is to find the lids and dig them up. And well test, I don't know, the potability is pretty cheap and easy because you pull the water yourself, but depending on the length of the well test and the number of staff that need to be there, you're paying hourly rate for up to 2-3 people sometimes. So it's expensive, which is why you would check the box for the seller to pay for it. Home warranty. Buyer shall choose coverages regardless of any optional coverages indicated of the home warranty plan, and the buyer shall pay any cost of that plan chosen by the buyer that exceeds the amount allocated to seller. If there's any language that makes me smile, it's that language right there. You don't have to, as the agent, and we talked about this last session, you don't have to feel obligated to pay for the difference of the home warranty. If you want to buy something for the buyer as a thank you gift, buy them pizza or a knife set or a welcome home mat or a key ring or something. If you want to buy them, if you want to pay money, if and not get thanked for it, go ahead and buy a home warranty. There is the option if the buyer waives purchase of a home warranty, the buyer may still purchase a warranty plan at the buyer's expense prior to the close of escrow. And each brokerage has their own stance. Often it's tied to your E&O insurance. So the brokerage may have a stance that somebody, whether it's a buyer or the seller, has to pay for the home warranty, and it has to be through a specific company or plan type for it to be covered, for you to have additional coverage or a lower deductible on your E&O. So check with your broker on that. Anything else on this section that we need to, allocation of costs that we need to touch on? This is going a little slower than I had hoped, but we might have to do another session next week. Statutory and other disclosures, including paint hazards. I don't think there were really any changes in here. These are statutory, so the changes are going to be big when a new law comes into play. Transfer disclosure statement, TDS, SBQ or ESD, if you've got it. All those things will be reminded to you that you need to provide by either your TC or whoever's helping you with the transaction. And this isn't even really a brokerage issue. This is all agents. You need to know your stuff when it comes to these. What are my years again, Kate? Is it 76 or 78 for lead and asbestos?
78.
78. Yeah, I think we're safe there. So lead is broken out separately. Fire hardening advisory, again, Kate touched on that. I think it's a good idea for us to have a separate session on that as well. But home fire hardening, it's an awful name because it doesn't really give you any, the name does not provide you what is involved in that. Who many people, I mean, raise a hands, who knows what fire hardening is? For any transaction where a TDS is required, which is a residential less than 4 units, the property is located in a high or very high fire hazard severity zone, and the home is constructed prior to January 1, 2010. The seller shall, within the time specified, deliver to the buyer a home hardening disclosure required by law, a statement of features regarding compliance and defensible space requirements if one was pursuant to government code subsection blah blah blah. Basically, as a homeowner, you have an obligation to reduce the potential loss and damage of yours and other properties by reducing potential fire fuel. What's the hardening part, Kate? I've never really gotten clear on that.
Fire hardening is the roofing material, gutters cleaned out.
Okay.
I can't think of any other little items, but
I have to Google what exactly the definition of fire hardening is, but it's basically removing fuel.
Yep.
So that yours and other properties don't catch on fire, or at least reduces the fuel available to the fire.
exactly.
Defensible space goes along with that as well. We're not talking about your local militia keeping their compound safe. This is defensible from fire.
That deserved a good laugh.
The waiver prohibited, I like the way this is done. I don't remember even really where that was. It was probably buried in the statutory, but I do like that it's got its own. So waiver prohibited. These statutory lead and other disclosures are prohibited by law. You can't put a waiver in, and I actually had an agent try to do that once. They tried to say that the lead and asbestos disclosure was not a part of this contract. At the time, I was new enough that I kind of went, "Oh, this is kind of strange." And I went to my broker and asked them about it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, this is against the federal law. No, we're not doing that." Yeah, it's good to have that as its own separate little paragraph or subparagraph. Return of signed copies, and need to provide all of these to give us some specific days. Termination rights, keeping in mind that, well, let's see, statutory disclosures. Oh, here we go. So this is, I don't know, was it this way before, Kate? Did we have 3 days before if they deliver in person?
I don't
remember.
remember it being broken out like that.
I always
But,
hung my hat on the 5 days after delivery.
right. No, it was not ever spelled out exactly this explicitly, ever.
So if any disclosure specified in the seller disclosures list or subsequent or amended disclosure to those specified is delivered to the buyer after the offer is signed, the buyer shall have the right to terminate this agreement within 3 days after delivery in person or 5 days after delivery in deposit and mail. This is the, what's the word I'm looking for? You get to just, this is if before the deposit has gone in, right?
I'm not following you.
Oh, there was the ability to rescind if the disclosures didn't go in, if the buyer didn't receive the disclosures within 3 days of the acceptance, then the buyer could rescind the contract and back out.
Right of rescission.
Right of
Yeah,
rescission. I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
it isn't.
It has to do with the defensible space and other disclosures. It is always best for your seller to provide those disclosures up front. We see these big packets in other areas that have the seller having paid for home inspection, pest inspection, sewer, septic, well, everything up front. That provides some security and safety for the seller in the fact that if they provide all of those and their seller disclosures up front, that the offers that they're going to see will be more accurate. They will have less pushback for requests for repairs from a buyer. Yes, the seller has to put a little bit of money up front, but it should not be something that's going to cause them any grief. And now prices are so high that most sellers are walking away with a substantial amount of money to be able to have to pay $1,000 for $1,500 for a bunch of inspections in advance. I think is well worth it. And getting them to provide their disclosures up front is also well worth it. Withholding taxes, if it's an investment property, we're dealing with withholding taxes, and they deal with some rules there, FERPTA and such. I don't think there's any changes there. Megan's Law is not something that we really should be giving any advice on, and that's put in there as a paragraph as a recommendation or a reminder for the buyer to check Megan's Law as often as they feel they would need to and satisfy themselves that that is there. Do not check Megan's Law on behalf of your buyer. Check with your broker and make sure that they're in line with that with me. But I would say never check Megan's Law on behalf of a buyer. You don't know what is okay or not okay for your buyer, unless you want to get sued and have to buy a house from somebody because you told them it was fine and it turns out there was somebody that was living nearby that was not fine.
Yes. May I make sure that you and Kim both know that the Paso Robles sex offender ordinance was officially rescinded by City of Paso Robles about 3 months ago. So
I did not know that.
Yep, no longer part of the requirement for Paso city limits.
Now they do have a statewide requirement that the sex offenders can't live within 250 feet of a school or public playground, right? Something like that.
I think that's in the Megan's Law disclosure.
Okay.
Particulars there.
Okay. Well, that's interesting to know. I wonder.
Our chief of police came and talked to us about it at an association meeting.
It'd be interesting to get the why and how on that.
Yeah.
Liquid transmission pipelines. This is another one of those that deal with your AVID. In that language, it says, did you know or should you have known based on your status as a professional? We do have liquid gas transmission or liquid transmission pipelines from a refinery just south of our area. And that oil or whatever it is gets pumped up to the Bay Area at thousands of gallons a minute. You need to know if you're selling a house nearby or on top of that pipeline. This is going to be a big deal for your buyer. So you're going to want to give them a heads up on that. There's no change that I know of on that paragraph, but this is just a little word to the wise. I actually, when I was a new agent, was showing houses over by where that pipeline was and had my buyer ask me, what's that yellow triangle on a yellow post for? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to have to look into that. And I'm glad I answered it that way, because that's where, dig down deep enough, that's where the liquid oil transmission pipeline was. And they expressed their displeasure in having a home near something like that, essentially saying that it was like having the Exxon Valdez in their front yard, which is pretty true, although your pipeline's not going to run underground. Condo and plan disclosures, I don't think there's much in the way of changes there. Natural hazard zone disclosure we touch on. The seller is required to provide it, but there is a breakdown of who can pay for it. It's just the seller needs to make sure that that information gets relayed. If the seller wants to go create their own list of natural hazard zone items and relay those to the buyer, they're welcome to do it, but $100 is pretty cheap, $125. So just have your seller do it. Known material facts, big fan of this one. I think it's something that you're going to want to touch on, that the agent and the seller both have to provide known material facts. And material definition is something that would affect the desirability. What's my other word, Kate, that I'm looking for? It is value and desirability of the property. That's right. Buyer's investigation now is no longer at 14B. It is paragraph 12. So we break out that's the old one, sorry. That is broken out here, the number of days that we deal with. Where are we? That's who pays for what, and then our number of days. Oh yeah, that's up above. So we have our inspection periods, number of days after acceptance. So you're going to break out how long they have for contingency, so loan appraisal and investigation of the property. Your definitions and such is going to show up here. Well, is this our old one? Yeah, that's our old one. Paragraph 12. Buyer shall within the time specified up above on 3L have the right at their expense to conduct investigations, inspections, tests, surveys, and other. They get to do general home inspection, lead-based paint, all these kind of things, wood-based organisms, and other investigations such as insurance. Very recommended that you look at insurance right now, and others not specified above. Without seller's prior written consent, the buyer shall neither take nor cause to be made any invasive or destructive buyer investigations. Don't tell your buyer it's okay for them to dig or cut or kick a hole in anything. Can't drill through stucco or similar materials. You can't have the pest control reports that are prepared. They actually say we only look at things that are visible to us. They actually don't even move couches really. They just look at what's there and the access that they have available to them, because they know that they're not going to be moving anything. The buyer also needs to look at any inspections and governmental building or zoning inspection and rules. The seller obligates themselves to make the property available, but not obligated to move any personal property out of the way. They need to have the gas, water, and electric on. You'd be surprised at how many times this comes up. The seller says, well, I got to pay $75 to get the gas turned back on. I don't want to do that. This is where they would have committed themselves, having signed the contract, that they need to make sure that the gas is on and the power, especially when the appraiser's coming out, as you don't want to pay the appraisal $150 or $200 to come back out and take a look at it again. And then buyer to indemnify the seller. There's no real change there. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but the buyer needs to keep the property free and clear of liens, repair any damage arising from their investigations, and indemnify the seller, hold harmless from any resulting liability claims. So unless the seller has created a danger or a hazard, if you're wandering around on their ranch property and you step in a gopher hole and hurt yourself, they would just have standard visitation liability. They don't have any specific requirement to indemnify the buyer. So watch where you step. Title investing, I don't think, again, that there are any changes in the contract when it comes to title investing. I honestly push that off to have them have a discussion with their professional advisors on how they should plan on taking title, or talk to the escrow officer, who has a very nice graphic that they can hand them or email them that describes the different types of taking title. There are advantages and disadvantages to each method, and regardless of how well you know your buyer, this is a spot where you could get yourself into some pretty hot water if you gave the wrong advice of how they should take title based on how you understand them. Just stay out of it. Don't practice law or any other advice without a license, and just push them off to somebody who is a true professional in that arena.
I think it's worth pointing out that 13E is brand new.
Oh, I missed that.
This is on the geographic targeting order.
Financial crimes.
Yep, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I don't remember ever dealing with that before. Do you?
If a buyer is a legal entity and the property purchase price is at least $300,000, the purchase price is made without a bank loan or similar financing, Geographic targeting order is issued by the Financial Crimes Network. I don't remember that. U.S. Department of Treasury. What are they doing?
And looking for drug money.
They're
Oh.
buying houses with drug money?
Mhm. Well, that's what I would do if I were sitting on a big pile of cash.
I'd buy cryptocurrency, I guess, is what I would. I don't know. Isn't that what drug people do? I don't know.
No.
Okay, well, that's new. If the buyer is a legal entity and the property purchase is at least 300 grand. Wow. Okay. I don't know what more we would need to talk about other than to read it over and over and over. I don't even know what geographic targeting order is. Kate, are you hot? Are you up to speed on that?
No, I'm not. This is all a relatively recent manifestation. And seriously, I think it's out of the laundering drug money experience.
Yeah. Does this put the agent in the position of trying to be is the agent required to be some sort of whistleblower on the?
No, absolutely not. But the buyer should know that they have agreed to cooperate with any efforts to comply with the.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it requires title company to collect and report certain information about the buyer, depending on where the property is located. Buyer agrees to cooperate with the title company's effort to comply.
What geographic areas are they targeting for this?
I have not drilled down on this one.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kate. I don't know. Maybe we're far enough from the border that it doesn't come up. I haven't. Other than watching the Sicario movie where they, where that went on there, I don't know. It hasn't come up for me, and I haven't come across it. So good heads up on that, Kate. Thank you. Yeah, this is my little rant that I went on earlier, right? The manner of taking title may have significant legal and tax consequences. Please consult an appropriate professional. 100%. Time periods and removal of contingency rights. We are still 14B. Okay. So we just canceled a contract and I referenced 14B and I thought to myself, I wonder if this is going to change. Buyer review of documents, repair requests, contingency removal, and cancellation. One thing that you'll note is new is this language here. The repair request, the old ways used to be. I think they had the option to get a repair request. Within time specified, the buyer may request the seller take repairs and actions. Buyer has time specified. It would have been here. I don't see, some of that language has been modified considerably, looks like.
Yeah, that whole 14B is worthy of some drill down.
Okay, so buyer has the time specified in paragraph 3, ostensibly 17 days, to perform investigation, review disclosures, reports, lease documents, and to be assumed by the buyer. We referenced some of those lease documents with the solar discussion we had earlier. Pursuant to paragraph 9B, and other applicable information which buyer receives from the seller. Prove all matters with the property, deliver to the seller signed copies of the statutory and other disclosures. Buyer may, within time specified, request that the seller make repairs. We use form RR for that. And then the response is made on the quad R. That's what we're calling it, everybody. Let's just all call it the quad R. If the seller does not agree or does not respond, the buyer is not contractually entitled to have the repairs or other requests made and may only cancel based on contingencies in this agreement. Buyer shall, by the end of the time specified in 3L, deliver to seller removal of applicable contingency. However, any report or disclosure information which the seller is responsible, other than those in the paragraphs mentioned, is not delivered within the time specified. The buyer has 5 days after delivery of such items. This is our 5 days for the disclosures. So the buyer, most often, you'll get in there as the buyer's agent and order all of the things that you are responsible to coordinate with the buyer to get ordered. Home inspection, pest inspections, sewer, bring out a heating guy, have a roofing guy look at it, like any of those things that the buyer is responsible for. You want to get on those right away, of course. if the seller is responsible for it, and then maybe they're dragging their feet. I think that in Nevada, I just went through Nevada's bunch of classes for the Nevada license that I've got. And in Nevada, if the seller provides the disclosures the day before the close, if the buyer accepts them and signs off on them, that constitutes an acceptance and the release of the contingency. Now, in California, you don't get to do that. California, you have the buyer has 5 days after receipt, and that's the same method of counting days that we always do, which is the day that is received is day 0, tomorrow's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5 p.m. on the 5th day is the time which the release of that contingency would be due. So if and one of my favorite stories is I had a broker who actually kind of scolded me a little bit for not knowing what I was doing when I was a very, very new agent. 10 years later, I came back around and was doing business with her again on another transaction. And her seller left a number of items blank on the seller disclosures, whether it was the TDS or the SPQ or maybe both. Actually, Tiffany, you'll probably remember this one. And they left them blank. And I noticed it. And I actually sent an email to the agent saying, hey, these items are blank. The seller disclosures are incomplete, and we need to get these remedied. Well, the seller was in Europe and whatever was going on, and it just never got updated. So the time came for us to remove our contingency, and she sent a notice to perform. And I said, we'd be happy to remove the contingency, but you need to get us a complete version of the seller disclosure. My buyer was a VA. He had 0 money down, and he had some genuine concerns about this particular property. And so it was actually on like day 26 that we finally got the fully updated seller disclosures, and eventually, and then got another 5 days after that. So we were nearly headed into closing escrow, and the loan was ready to fund by the time we got that contingency released. Great for my buyer because he had the protection in place, could back out really at any time based on inspections. And the broker on the other side did not push to get all of the other inspection contingencies released. She just left it alone and marched off. It felt a little good to me to be able to protect my buyer like that, and to go realize that over a decade of experience, I was now able to go back and teach the teacher, if you will, from somebody who gave me a little bit of kind of red in my face and scolded me a little bit back in the day. These contingency periods are very important. This 5 days is vital. You will notice the more you spend time writing these offers for buyers and being in this contract more and more, you'll notice how buyer heavy and buyer protective the residential purchase agreement is. There are genuinely 2 ways for a seller to back out. Either the buyer doesn't perform, or it's non-performance and one other. That's the only way that, and we're going to talk about that next actually, is with these sellers right. They don't either the buyer doesn't release a contingency or they don't perform a contractual obligation. That's it. Once the seller commits to sell, they're selling it. And in California, it's a very, very buyer-friendly environment within this contract. So know your contract really well, know your contingency periods as well. And these little, like the 5 days that we have here, the 3 days that we have earlier on, make a big deal. And it really shows your professionality when you're talking to your buyer and protecting your buyer in that way. So I'm running a little long, but I want to see if we can finish paragraph 14 before we get moving. Are you anything that you want to loop back in, Kate, before we move on to subparagraph D?
Nope, I think we're doing great.
Okay, so we touched on my little rant there that I went on about contingencies. So this was, I don't remember when the light switched on, but there was a point where I was reviewing the contract with a buyer and I was like, holy crap, the seller really only has 2 ways that they can get out of this contract. Mm-hmm. It's buyer contingencies and buyer contract obligations. That's it. Like, you're selling this house. You don't really get a chance to change your mind. Now, There are instances where the ability to sell will possibly be taken away from the seller, right? If they are in the process or if they file for bankruptcy while the property is listed or even in escrow, bankruptcy court can rip that right out of their hands if they get sideways with the law, with financial crimes, or the IRS places a lien on it for back taxes. They didn't move fast enough to get it sold before that happened. Those kind of things can stop or slow down the escrow process. But for all intents and purposes, and 99.9% of all transactions that we deal with, these are the ways that the seller can essentially pull the pin and get out of the contract. So if the buyer doesn't release their contingencies, and then we have the methods by which the seller would notify them and then issue a cancellation. And then if the buyer did not perform some contractual obligation that they committed themselves to, we have the method by which the seller would notify the buyer and then cancel on them. So that's where we deal with here. This whole paragraph deals with the time periods and how to issue and how that all works. And I don't know if we want to get into the details of how to process cancellation or not. It's really a pretty straightforward process, although that paragraph is massive.
But you do have to handle it right.
You do need to do it right. And Kate, you've been really helpful for me. I remember when I was newly the broker of record, and we had a situation where an agent thought she had a contract canceled when it wasn't actually canceled, and then had her seller accept another buyer's contract, and we got into a whole issue with that. And these dates and times and the fact that a contract is actually canceled when it's canceled, it gets to be very, very important. It is the demands to perform and the cancellation and the actual canceling of an escrow fall a lot of times on the listing agent to make sure that gets done correctly. One thing that I think we dealt with, and I did not touch on, but if you back up here to the top of continuation, I hate how this computer does this. Continuation of contingency, that comes in on more transactions, and Tiffany or Kim, any of the TCs that deal with this concept of continuation of contingency rather than a hard date. So in other states, you have 10 days to do your investigation. Once you hit day 11, your deposit goes hard, as they say, right? It is now at risk, and there's no form to sign. There's no extension other than in writing. Like, it is what it is. We see that in commercial in California, but not in residential. In residential, if the seller or their agent does not hold the buyer's feet to the fire with the rules that we've established here, the rules we're going to play the game by, if they don't issue a notice to perform in time, if they don't issue the cancellation once the notice to perform has been issued, then the days will continue on forward. So if you get to day 17 and there's been no notice to perform, and maybe the agents are talking to each other, and hopefully the buyer's agent is telling the listing agent what's going on, like, hey, we're going to need another couple of days to get the well report back, or we haven't had a chance to see the lease agreement for the solar yet, so we're going to need to, and then you write up an actual extension. But in this case, continuation is a default extension. Those days will just keep on going until somebody puts their foot down and signs a document that says, okay, now you need to perform. You need to release your contingency. So that contingency is in place for the buyer, potentially for the duration. I mean, if you've got a good transaction coordinator and you've got a handle on your calendar, you'll know when those days are. But I've seen that go both ways, right? On the listing side and on the buy side, the concept of continuation, it is not unique to California, but it is something that once you've learned it and you understand it, need to be careful not to assume that it is that way in every contract. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but your contingency period will just continue on until such time as the seller makes you perform in some way. The buyer has rights to cancel. They can cancel basically, I think we counted these up, Kate. What was it? 16 or 17 different ways a buyer can get out of their contract.
Actually, there's 8 hard safety hatches for the buyer.
Okay, 8 hard ones. So the biggies are loan, inspection, and appraisal. Those are the big 3 that we primarily deal with most of the time. There are seller disclosures and other little trapdoors we can build in there. We talked about the interest rate being one of those that you can potentially bail if the buyer does not get qualified for the interest rate that they placed or you placed with their assistance on the contract. So the buyer has lots of ways to get out, and the seller's got 2 primarily. Don't know. We should probably, that's another thing too. Tiff, make a note for me if you would. We need to go over the cancellation of contract. It's a 2-part form that may, it's a big deal to fill it out correctly. We need to go over that too. Notice a buyer or seller to perform. It's laid out differently. I don't know that I like the way. So our notice to perform before, where are we? Is here. So it used to be notice of NBP, NSP in writing, signed by the applicable buyer or seller, give the party at least 2 days after delivery. That's the same. They update the language a little bit here. It says whether or not scheduled performance day falls on Saturday, Sunday, or a legal holiday. So we don't arbitrarily get to push that forward until Monday at 5 or Tuesday at 5. Notice a buyer to perform notice, cancel agreement, or meet an obligation specified in paragraph 14, whether or not the scheduled performance day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. If
That is new language.
Yeah, if notice a buyer to perform or notice seller to perform is incorrectly delivered or specified a time less than the time agreed, the notice shall be deemed invalid and void, and the seller or buyer shall be required to deliver a new notice to perform. That's really cool.
Well, it is, but what it throws me back into an area that I have worked real hard to get clear on. Okay, on our day count, if the day that the performance is scheduled falls on a weekend or a holiday, then yes, all performance goes to the next actual business day. Now they add in this language, whether or not the scheduled performance day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. And I go back into confusion on that.
Right. So I think the way the language is on the definitions is that if the performance is reliant upon the performance of another party, you get to wait till that other holiday, after the weekend or the holiday. But if
go down to
days. Counting days is done as follows. First day of an event is first full calendar day following the event, ending at 11:59. Yeah, so a day is a 24-hour period starting at midnight, ending at midnight. So if you get a document at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's day 0. Tomorrow, or starting tonight at midnight, would be day 1, for example. Oh, yeah, 3 p.m. Man, that's funny. They use 3 p.m. also in their example. 7th day of the month. Boy, this is all example. All calendar days are counted in establishing the first day of the event. All calendar days are counted determining the day upon which performance must be completed, ending at midnight. After acceptance, if the scheduled performance day of any act or requirement of this agreement, including close of escrow, lands on Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, performing party shall be allowed to perform on the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. For the purpose of closing escrow, any day that recorder's offices of the county is closed, COE shall occur the next day.
So am I correct in hearing that the counting of days has not changed, just the explanation of the counting of days has changed?
Yeah, so it's the performance of any duty. And I'm gonna maybe we'll do some research because I hate doing research while we're being recorded, but the training that we attended online, Kate, when they were talking about this, it has to do with the performance of a duty if the buyer is able to release the contingency without relying on the performance of another party, right? Which would be during business hours, like waiting on the escrow or waiting on something else, then the contingency can and should be released. Falls on a weekend, you got to release it on a weekend. But
you have to release?
No, okay, that was my old belief for years and years.
yeah,
But the way this language updates us, I think that contingency still runs to the next actual business day.
so we are buyer right to cancel or contingency.
That's the way it's been.
Notice a buyer to perform, cancel this agreement, need obligation. So this is specific to the notice to perform. So once the notice, let's say we issue a notice to perform on a Friday, release the contingency. They get Saturdays day one, Sundays day two. Am I reading this right? That they would have to release the contingency? It's due Sunday by midnight, whether or not the scheduled performance falls on Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday.
I know
Notice
that throws me into confusion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We're gonna have to dig into this a little bit, guys, and you know we're playing a game of stump the dummy with the recorder on. So, but Kate,
edit.
Yeah, we'll edit this out. Tom, edit all that out.
Brilliant brokers.
Let's dig into that, Kate. If you wouldn't mind sniffing around a little bit and see if we can get some clarification. I will do the same, and let's meet back when we're not going to be able to finish this today. It's 2:30. I got to wrap up, but
let's do another session.
We'll do one more session. I will be around Tuesday next week. I want to get this done before December 1. I want to get this done and out on the interwebs. So if enough of us can meet next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, that would be great by me. I'll be in town. Let's just see if we can get together and knock it out.
Let's do.
Are you meeting in December?
December 1 is what, yeah, we'll meet the first and third Tuesdays in December anyway, just for our normal group coaching calls. But this series of specific RPA, new RPA specific classes or whatever sessions that we're doing, I wanted to have those out and completed and edited and released before the December 1 so that people can have a chance to review them. I don't know, like have the last session be on December, I don't know, 3rd or whatever.
I would love to come to class next week, but in all honesty, my desire is probably going to be squelched by the fact that I'm driving out of town midday Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I'll reach out to everybody individually and see if we can schedule this out. Let me wrap up the video part of this, guys. Okay, so Tom, you're going to have your hands full editing this out this time, but sorry about that, buddy.
Tom.
For the rest of us, thank you for being here. These are going to be available on the YouTube, and you know, all efforts were made to do this in such a way that we've got a little bit of background, a little bit of explanation on some of the changes that they're doing. We're going to pick this back up either next week or the following and finish this out. If you have any questions, if you're interested in getting coaching from me one-on-one regarding the contract or your career or whatever you need as an agent, go to scotttaylorprivatecoaching.com and sign up there. Very reasonable. Otherwise, get your hands on the bi-monthly coaching calls that we do on first and third Tuesdays. Those are free and open to everybody to come visit, and you can get your questions answered and dig into contract stuff like we deal with here. Thanks everybody for being here.